Hey everybody, we're back. Chris Garlock, Michael Redmond, and we're back with game 3 of the AlphaGo Zero, AlphaGo Master mini-series that we're doing. As always, before we get started, I want to thank all our AGA members. If you'd like to support this content as well, please consider joining the American Go Association at usgo.org. So, Michael, we're kind of with game 3 of the new AlphaGo Zero series, and just before we jump into this game, just thinking about the first couple of games, am I right in observing there just seems to be a lot more going on sort of under the hood? I mean, I was just thinking about that last game where there was a move that sort of didn't seem to make sense, but it set up something for 30 moves later. Is that am I off on that or what?
Oh yeah, I would agree with you. I've been saying that Zero and the KJ version sort of resemble each other in some ways, especially in the way they play around the 3-3 invasions. And there's a taste to their play that is quite similar. But what you just mentioned is one of the differences. Like the KJ version tends to sort of jump into it and get into these big fights quite often. And it's, in a way, it's much more exciting. But then the Zero version is, there's a lot of hidden reading, like I was going into in game number 2. And it's just like I was saying when Master was beating all the human players, there's a much larger element of control, like it's controlling the game to a certain degree. And a lot of the reading, you might say, is not actually coming out on the board. It's controlling the game and controlling the flow of the game, just as Master was doing against the top human players.
Right. Yeah, which I think makes what you're doing and the depth of it, and running out the variations for us, I think even more important, because again, when I was just looking at the games, I was just like, yeah, I need to get Michael because I don't know, I don't know what's going on here. So we appreciate that. All right, what's the overview on game 3? What are we going to be seeing here?
Okay, so Master has black again. And in this game, we're going to see Master playing a lot of moves towards the center. So it's going to have a lot of stones floating around and looking really neat in the center of the board. And I think it has a good opening. I think Master had a good opening in this game. And then there's one move I really don't like. So it is a kind of a turning point in the game there.
Okay, all right, let's take a look at it.
I get the feeling, like myself, when I'm playing against a very formidable player, I find that like the one mistake will just turn everything very sour quite quickly. And that's the feeling I get when I'm watching Master playing against Zero. Like Zero is so sharp that just one small miss will change everything, even if the game is going well up to that point. And I do have a feeling that AlphaGo is, in general, and especially with Zero, I think it gets better as the game progresses. Like I'm not so sure about some of the things it's doing in the opening. I still sort of doubt these 3-3 invasions, but as the game progresses, it gradually gets stronger and stronger, is my impression.
Right. And just to remind folks, you're just playing this out because this is, again, up to a certain point, it's just the same opening, right?
Well, up to this point. And so this is where I talk about that. And it's the same opening. I have talked about it in the opening video.
That's right.
So, and a little bit in game number 1, 2, I think. So this is where Master finally can choose. It played this move in the game, or it could play A. It played A a few times, and it played B, I think, just once out of the 20. And again, I'm just talking about the 20 games because I think there's more, but and maybe they'll be coming out later, which will, of course, naturally that will change the numbers. But I think this was maybe the move that Master seemed to like best. And I was noting in the KJ self-play series that when White invades the upper right corner like that and creates that Joseki, The KJ version seems to think that it's okay to jump into the lower right corner. So these two corners seem to form a pattern where black seems more likely to want to jump into the through 3 point. So this is something that the master version did a few times. And here we can see that white is just extending. This is a way that white can take sente. So when white does that, well, not only this move, but especially with this move, when white is doing this, white is saying white doesn't want to play too many moves towards the right side, because obviously with that Joseki that I've marked in the upper right corner, the right side is not so big in this game.
Sure.
So white is saying, if white plays here, black has to either crawl or play a knight's move. Black played the knight's move in this game. I think if we go through the whole 20 games, we will find a game where black crawled on the third line at this point too. So this is a point where black had both choices. And so that means that white has sente and white can play first on the lower side. And I think Zero played this move a few times. I remember that it played at A only once. And that was the game that it lost.
Okay.
And so like it lost only one out of the 10 games it had white in this 20-game set. Because Zero had white in 10 games and Master had white in 10 games.
Okay.
The only game that Zero lost with white was the game where it played at A in this position. And I get the feeling that Zero really likes to grab territory. I think it's pretty obvious, actually. And I also think it plays better when, well, obviously that would be the reason for it to like it. It has a better results when it takes the territory, and so that sort of explains it. And so that's reinforced by the observation that it lost when it played at A. And so Master plays this is a move that a human would play too. Some people might play the shoulder hit on the right. But the capping move looks nice too. And now Zero plays here. Now this is, in game 2, I think I talked more about the attachment at A.
Yeah.
Zero also likes to play this pressing move against that shape in the upper left. So since we have so many games, we might as well take it in degrees. So in this game, I'm going to talk a bit about this is the other move that it likes to play in this position. And quite often we'll see that black pushes through and cuts at this point. I'm talking about this.
Sure.
And this leads to a very complicated variation. And it's kind of a Master versus Zero Joseki that they've created here. But it didn't happen in this game. So I'm going to save that for a later game.
Okay.
In the game, black continues to play here. And this is a move that really looks... it's a Master type move. It's a move that Master likes to play. Again, we can see that it's a 3-space pincer against that white wall on the right. And all of the AlphaGos, the Master version, the KJ version, and the Zero version, they like to keep this distance from the wall. You might notice that it's just, it's close enough to keep white from making an extension.
Yep.
And so it's close enough to keep white from making an extension. And it's about the distance that that AlphaGo likes to stay away from the wall, because black is actually thinking of attacking that wall to a certain degree. And so white plays on the left. That's another natural move. Well, it would be painful to allow black to play on both sides of that stone. And so black plays here. And this is a slightly tight move, but of course black started with a kind of a loose shape. Like I'm saying, I would like to be playing at A, but I'm not. But this move, the comparison between this move and A is actually pretty difficult, because A would be a rather weak shape, and the B and C I have there, the Hane and the hanging connection at C are moves that white can usually play with sente. Black will usually be answering those two moves from the corner. It means that white has potential to attack black on the lower side. And so black playing tightly here, it sort of reinforces black's connection to that stone on the left that I'm about to mark, to this stone. It reinforces the connection to this stone. So maybe it makes sense in this position. And white jumps here. Now I'm going to say this is bad. It's probably the first time I'm going to say a move that Zero did was bad, so it's sort of adventurous of me, maybe.
Yeah.
It's when white's going to play this move. Basically, this move is getting rid of the cutting point there. So it's protecting white's group. White should play the forcing move first and then protect. So
there's no reason not to, right?
There's no reason not to. And if white plays A first, as white did in the game, then when white pushes at B later, it's not going to be forcing because the black stone at C is not going to be so important. Right. So it's sort of a basic technique to play this pushing move first, and then to protect at A. So when white doesn't do that, and we can see Master playing these moves are moves that I've seen similar moves in the Master series, in which Master was playing human players. So it looks very characteristic of Master to be playing this way. And now white pushes. So the order of moves was wrong. And since white already has the stone at A, there's no reason for black to save that stone at B. It's become very small, actually.
It was probably a clicko.
A clicko, yeah. So white loses a tempo. So this is the point that I have the feeling that the game is good for black because of that.
I like black's sort of lacrosse trick shape there. You know.
Oh yeah. And so looking at the overall position, again, this move is a relatively tight move. I would want to play at A. And in this case, I don't really see any reason that black should not play at A. It puts more pressure on the white group.
Yeah.
But Master plays the two-space jump, and now white can jump out here. And although this wall, black is sort of trying to attack it, it's not going to be easy to attack this wall. Like this large, nice move is, in effect, it's connected to the wall. There's no way that black can cut it off. So that's a connection there, and white has space on the lower side to make some eyes if it's really necessary.
Right.
So it's not as if black can get a big attack against that white group. And there's also the fact that there's not really very much happening on the right side. There's nothing that black can threaten as a double attack or anything like that. So it's a pretty quiet area in general. And so black jumps in here. And looking at the overall position, we have this black territory in the lower right and the white territory in the upper right. So those sort of balance each other. And then white's only other territory is this territory in the lower left. So if black can erase that territory, black's going to have potential to have a lead in territory because there's going to be some territory on the upper side. So this is a point where I would be wanting to play with the black stones because I think this move is going to amount to something at least. And white covers from above. And it looks like for the time being, it's going to be difficult for white to attack this black group in the corner. So black is pulling ahead in territory.
That's very nice. I mean, 3 moves and just erased the whole corner.
Yeah. Well, that was the idea. Like when black was playing this move, this is a point where some people would have wanted to play kind of an attachment move to in a way, move quickly to connect up to that stone on the left. But this kind of exchange would make it much more difficult for black to. Right. So black was sort of saving its strength, you might say, to set up this move later on in the game. And so this was according to plan, you might say. And white has no good effective attack on the corner, so white starts to attack in the center. And that is a kind of a weak position that black has there. And so this is going to be a very important fight in this game. And white, disregarding the bad shape, white just cuts black here.
Wow.
Yeah. So if white can capture these 4 stones, it's going to be pretty big. If white can capture the whole left side there, it's going to be very big.
Huge. It's like, yeah.
And for the time being, black can cut here and actually save the side with this sequence. This is threatening the 2 white stones in the center and gets a get up. But this would actually be bad for black because white's capture there is so big.
Wow.
And this would change the status of black's corner group. and it would make the right side group there in the center very weak. And of course, black's group on the left side only has one eye also. So in this case, black's not gaining anything. It's not good enough. But if black can capture that stone on a ladder, it's going to be a different story. So right now, the ladder favors white. So black plays this is actually a ladder breaking move. A really sharp move. I like this move. And so if white answers it somehow, black's just going to capture in the ladder. And now this is a different story. Like this, in this case, black's going to have some potential to be attacking in the center. And so this is much better than having those two stones taken off the board, as in the previous variation. So white answers in the center, and black plays one attachment. And so this sequence happens. White covers. There's still something that could happen to break through there, but black starts with covering here. White protects the weak point. And this seems to be a reasonable variation. Now, for the time being, that black group is not completely alive. And we're gonna see how that works out later in the game, because they actually play the variation to make a ko. They actually play that out in the game. So we're gonna see what happens as far as the Tsimigo part of this is concerned. But for the time being, white's really weak on the outside. So I think it's reasonable that white plays once here to reinforce all of the trouble that could happen with a black cut at A or a black Atari at B also causes a lot of trouble. So this makes sense, and white is threatening to capture the two the marked stones. I've only marked one of them.
Sure.
And white's threatening to capture those cutting stones there. And now black plays this move.
Wow.
Which locally it makes sense. Black's saving the cutting stones. But as I see how the game progresses, I really hate this move. This move I dislike. Well, it's a very, it's a blah move anyway. It's not doing anything. It's just connecting up to the right.
It's the kind of move I would look at it, and you want to solve that problem, but it's just nothing. Ow.
One would like to be able to find a better shape.
It's a more stylish way of doing it. I don't know what it is, but something.
Well, my answer to that is that black should have just thrown those two stones away.
Oh, really? Wow. Interesting.
And allowed white to capture. And black does get a forcing move here. And
okay. All right. Yeah,
it's
that works.
In the process, black has played 3 moves. Like, black needed to play at A to completely live. This would be a completely alive shape. And the fact that black has a stone there means that white's not going to be able to attack the lower left corner very effectively. It makes a difference. And then the final move at C is really huge too. And white didn't have time to play there because the lower side, after black played at A, that white group on the lower side was being put under pressure. It didn't have ice.
Right.
So white had to go after the keystones. Black got to play the big move at C. And if we look at territory, like if we count out the upper right corner and the lower right corner, then white doesn't have very much territory to speak of. Like just that area where white took a few stones. So white's territory is pretty non-existent, and black has this potential territory on the upper side. And I think black has a small lead. It's not a big lead, but I think black has a small lead. I'd have to play out the game a few times, but I get the feeling that this black group on the lower side is about equal in strength to the white's group on the right. So the weakness of those two, if we say the weakness of those two groups sort of cancel each other out, then black is ahead by the territory on the upper side.
But it also just has a more positive feeling than that that move that just sort of saves the stones, right? I mean, it's a very odd feeling to it.
Well, as the game progresses, we're going to see this white stone at A come into play again and again. Like we were talking about recycling stones in other games. If we count this first time, I'm going to be talking about this stone at A about 4 times during the game.
So it really gets recycled.
It's recycled. It's work for the time being. It's working to reinforce white in the center. and it enables white to attack black on the left. So white covers here once, and then plays. And this Hanetsugi, just a very simple, almost a Yosei-looking move, an endgame move almost. This is the way that white can attack the black group. And I think some players would be tempted to play here, but this is actually not so good. Like this is going to be a ko too. But in this case, we can see that white's position in the center is very safe. Already black cannot push through there. And white's going to get a ko here. So it's this kind of a ko. And the fact that black cannot push through and cut at B is really important for white. And when this ko starts, maybe black has some local ko threats, but at the very least, white's going to kill the lower left corner, which is going to be really big. It's almost 30 points.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about 30 points of territory. So then I would have to add the black territory. So it's more than 30 points. So capturing that lower left corner is going to be really big.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the game, it's correct for black to play this kaketsugi.
Wow.
And so we can see this is sort of leading to a ko. So white gets rid of the one eye and then plays here, and it's going to be a ko. And, you know, this is where I sort of get aggravated by AlphaGo. All of the versions do it to me. It's kind of a common knowledge among pros that you just take the ko once. I think that it's almost like a proverb. You take the ko once. But in this case, in effect, it's not going to make much difference because black has ko threats. And when white does connect, it's actually better for black to play this way to erase any ko threats that white might have. So in the end, it turns out that black's going to win the ko anyway. White's going to take the corner anyway. So this is going to be white's ko threat. That's going to be the trade. And that kind of thing. And so black has enough ko threats that black's going to win the ko anyway. So let's see what happened in the game. In the game, white just connects without taking the ko. And it's saying it doesn't matter because black's going to win the ko anyway. And you might notice, well, if black, yes, let's do this one first. If black plays here, it's going to be sort of funny because white, it looks like it's a seki. But of course, the other side, black is going to die. So it's a seki on the left side, but that marked black group is going to be captured eventually. So this is a false seki.
Ooh, it's a false seki, which is a nice way of saying it's not a seki at all.
It's a dead black group, yeah. So black plays here, but we can see, I was saying that black should play on the first line here, right?
Yeah.
And instead black plays here. So black's giving back the ko threat. Black's giving back the ko threat that white lost by not taking the ko. And what I'm saying is that white takes the ko now. We have this ko going on. At this point, white could have played at this point for another ko threat.
Sure.
But there's no point because black has this point as a ko threat too.
Right.
And so black was just sort of being cheeky and giving back the ko threat. And so this is something that all of the versions of AlphaGo do. They like to do that. When it doesn't matter, they don't mind playing what I would call a bad move. And I didn't even mention that black has a ko threat. The final ko threat black could play here, which is going to be a bad exchange, but black could use that one too. Okay, to get back to the game. And so it didn't make any difference. Like I'm saying it was a bad move, but it didn't have any real bad effects. Because you can see black wanted to play this move anyway. This move, black's setting up to cut in the center. So black wanted to play this before connecting the ko. And white captures the corner. And so virtually, to talk about this marked black stone again, the effective result here is that black has played the marked stone and given white the lower left corner.
That seems like a really bad trade. Am I missing something?
That's what I'm saying. Like it's almost 30 points of white territories. It's more than 25 points. To save
a couple of stones.
And black had some territory there, so it's probably more than 30-point difference. And like those two stones in territory, they were less than 10 points, so it's really small. And it's not even helping black's shape. Like that marked black stone is not really giving black any eye shape. And so it's a useless, well, I wouldn't say it's useless, but it's a pretty inefficient stone. And so finally, black's going to make use of it by cutting here.
By cutting, okay, all right.
But we're going to see white recycling those stones. You know, it's not going to be ideal for black. And here's a point where white plays the double hane. And this is something that people can pick up from. Like a lot of the stuff that Zero does is going to be pretty complicated, and in many cases it's going to be only good in that particular game position. So it's such a general move that everyone can learn from.
Sure.
But in this case, this is a Tetsuji that you could just play by shape, and most of the time you'd be okay. And in this case, what white's trying to do in the game position is white's trying to throw away the center group.
Right.
So to give you an example of what not to do is to extend here and play this way.
Oh, save the group.
And white's trying to save the group, but white has this bad shape. Like if black plays an attachment here, for instance, this is going to be really bad shape for white in the center. This mark point that I put on the board is what they call the key point at the center of 3 stones. And this is one way that black can play it sometime later to take away all of white's eye space. So that white group in the center is pretty close to, it's going to be hard for white to make it into a living group.
Yeah.
And of course, that left side white's group, it needs a stone too.
I was just going to ask you because they seem like you get a pretty good attack going on that as well.
And that means at the very least, black's going to get a lot of territory in the upper side if black gets to attack the left side white group.
Right.
So this is just a lot of bad things that are going to happen to white. And so white plays the hane. And so like in the game, black just goes after that group and white gets to throw it away. So like if black was very stubborn, black would play here. But now white has great shape. There's a very big difference in the shape that white has here, because now it's already very difficult for black to kill this white group. Black would maybe peep there in the center, but white already has one eye, and black has to use a move to, let's just add a few stones to it. Like black would have to use an extra move to get rid of this eye, and it would be very bad shape for black in all. And that the connection there is not very good, the connection of black's stones. So black would have a lot of trouble trying to attack this white group. And black's shape with A is bad, and black's group with B is weak. So black has a lot of weak groups. It's going to make it easier for white to handle white's weak groups. Right. So this is an example of what white is trying to do with this double hane. This would just be so much better shape that this would be playable for white. So black cuts. And so again, that's an example of how this marked stone, this exchange, is making a huge difference. Because if that exchange wasn't in there, this wouldn't be so good for white. That marked exchange is making a huge difference. So that's maybe the third time I said that, right? It's maybe the third time I talked about this.
No, it's kind of, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So it's been recycled 3 times already.
It's going to happen once more. Yeah, so I'm going to enjoy it. Yeah. So white squeezes. And well, even now you can see, black's alive in the upper left corner. And white extends here. Again, you can sort of see that stone working. Again, yeah. And now white invades the upper side. At this point, I think the game is becoming very difficult for black. If we look at the overall position, white's territory in the lower left area is close to what black has on the left side and in the center. So if we say that area is pretty close, then the 2 corners on the right side are about the same. Black has a very small territory in the upper left corner. It's going to be less than Komi. It's sometimes hard to judge that kind of shape, but it's the kind of shape where black is enclosed into the corner. Usually you would expect black to be forced to put another stone in there. So it's somewhere in the vicinity of 7 points, but it's more likely it's going to be smaller than that.
Sure.
And so that brings the territory to the same, but we can see that white is sort of attacking on the upper side. And I think with all of those white stones forming kind of a wall, Even though it's not 100% alive, I'm expecting some white territory to be added onto that wall.
Yeah, black suddenly looks really thin on the upper side.
So I said it's getting difficult. It's not over yet. I wouldn't say it was over yet if it was humans playing, but it's looking to be difficult for black now.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see Master, and you have to remember Master is black. So Master is playing this Joseki that we've been seeing with the KJ version and the Zero version. So they sort of agree with this sequence here. And for the time being, the latter favors black. So white plays here. So you can guess what this is. It's a ladder breaking.
Looks like a ladder breaker. It's a mini ladder. It's like one of those little step ladders. It's not a full ladder.
Right. So black cuts here. So black is refuting the ladder breaking move. Like just allowing white to break through there would be terrible. Allowing white to escape with the ladder would be terrible. So black is making it interesting, making it exciting with this move.
There's no backing off at this point, right?
There's no backing off. Yeah. And if white does something really discussive, well, really bad in the center to make the ladder work, like
I liked your first word.
Okay. Like let's see, there's probably a point here where
I was just wondering, is that
Well, this is what happened in the game.
Oh, okay.
In the game, white just didn't bother with that ladder anymore. But I could try to maybe think of a way for white to make the ladder work, but it would be really bad. Like if white started doing stuff like this, maybe the loss in the center would be too bad to make it any good. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to say. But that neither Master nor Zero would do anything like that. It would be just too embarrassing. But again, we see the Sonade coming into play, threatening the bamboo joint at B. So it's, for the final time, this move it's still working. Like it could be something like 4 or 5 times.
So much out of this. Amazing. There's a real lesson in that even for amateur players, I think.
So like if white had not been able to exchange for this move, then the rest of the game would have been completely different.
Sure.
At many points it would have changed the game. So this exchange here, it was really good for white to play that exchange. But then I would say it was really bad for Master to allow it to be Sente. Black should have played on the left side.
That's why you'd be really happy to have just given those stones away much earlier and just have done with it, right?
Right. And so white plays these 2 forcing moves. And this is actually those 2 black stones are now captured.
Yeah.
If black tries to escape, it'll be a geta.
Yeah.
And so what white has gotten out of this is white has erased most of the center black territory.
Yeah.
So now it's less than 20 points. White still has that big territory in the lower left. So white has a huge lead in territory now.
Yeah, that's pretty nicely done, right?
Right, nicely done. And if we look at the upper side, it's not going to be easy for black to make too much territory out of it. Partly because white has that clamp on the second line there. So black plays here. We can see that Master is trying to put some pressure on the white group. That white group in the upper left area is not 100% alive. Once white plays here, it's going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's sort of one eye there, and white has all sorts of hidden eyes all over the place.
I could probably find a way to let that group die if it was me.
Yeah. So I'm saying at this point that white A and white has 2 good moves. White has A and B.
And B, right? Yeah. The clamp is nice.
And so Master is sort of desperately trying to find a way. And this is probably the best strategy for black to try to just bite in onto that white group and try to get some kind of an attack on it. And that will help black to make better shape on the upper side.
But black
it's not really, whatever black does, it's not going to amount to very much.
Yeah, he needs points, right? I mean, he needs some points. He's behind on points.
I think black has to start with the attack here.
Okay.
Because it's also taking away some white territory in the center.
Right.
And so white has sort of made sure of one potential eye there on the upper side, and then white just clamps here and says, no problem. because
Wow.
this group, yeah, but Black really had no way to make a big territory there anyway. And so we can see Master is really sort of just trying to find some kind of an attack here. And so switching back and forth between the right side and the upper left area. But Master, I mean, Zero is just, it's found a way to live. It's already alive. And Black is not 100% safe on the outside anyway. So this is the point where I can say that the upper left group is alive, because actually, if White plays at A with the corner situation there, where Black has to make sure of life, White's going to be able to get an eye with Sente there.
Right.
And also, if White plays at B, that's going to be a Sente eye too. So Black can erase one of these eyes if Black plays first. But then White's going to have an eye, a Sente eye at one of the two, and an eye at C. So
it's good enough.
It's good enough for the time being. And so White protects the right side too. Black plays here. Let's see. So Master is really trying to attack. This move actually, it gains a bit of territory, but it's losing half an eye. Now that area is just, it's not a Sente eye anymore. So now White has. If White plays first in the center, White's going to be alive. But if Black plays first in the center, it's not going to be alive. So after White plays here, I'm going to show you how that can happen. But actually, it's too early for Black to attack right now. Black can play here and push through here. These are both moves that, in real life, White has to answer both of them. Like if it was a Tsumego, I could find ways to ignore those moves and live. But these two moves, this move, and this move, in a real game, you have to answer these two moves.
Yeah.
And so Black can play here. And now there's no eye for White in the center.
Wow.
And so that's how Black gets rid of that eye that was, if White had played first, it would have been an eye with Sente. But in this variation, Black has gotten rid of that eye. And so White has half an eye and half an eye. So White doesn't have two eyes. But actually, when White plays the cut here at C, we can see Black is in trouble on the right, and also on the upper side. And Black's going to lose this semi. So Black's going to protect the right side and maybe survive there, but the upper side is going to die.
That's one way for White to live with his eyeless group.
Yeah. So White doesn't have eyes, but Black cannot attack it quite yet. And so, like, in a way, you could say that that marked exchange, it lost an eye for White, but it's okay when White plays this final move, which is big in territory, and is also putting pressure on Black.
I see.
So Black answers.
Okay, that.
And again, White's still threatening Black. Like again, White still with this move, White still has that cut there in Sente. And now White plays here. So now White has an eye. So that's. Now White has can make an eye with Sente in the center. And, you know, it's sort of hard to say who is attacking who, because Black's still not connected there.
I would be very worried as Black. I mean, you know, that big White group looks so juicy, but it looks, I mean, Black looks thin.
Yeah, Black looks thin. Well, you might notice in the process, Black has gotten some extra territory on the right side. So that was part of it. Yeah. And so White has an eye at A, and the second eye will be at B or C.
But this goes back to the point that we were going over at the beginning when I was looking at these games, and thanks to you, I have a better understanding of actually what's going on. But it was very clear, even just looking at the games, that you know that with these two AIs, playing, that it's highly unlikely that somebody's going to die. Therefore, something else is going on, and of course, it's about points, which means counting and calculating at a really amazing level, right?
Right. Well, it's a lot of work just to figure out what they're doing. And I'd say that with Zero, especially, there's a lot of that hidden contents. But it's true with the KJ version too. And as we see in this series of games, Master is keeping up with it also to a great degree. And I think with the KJ version, it's not really. It's getting into big fights more often, and sometimes groups die too. I think it's just a kind of a style thing. It's more like the KJ version likes to do that, and it usually gets into the big messes. And usually, even if these huge groups die, then it's still a half pointer or something like that. So it's really just doing it in a different way, and it's very exciting. But in these games, usually it's Zero sort of going for control of the game and a relatively small win. And in some of the games, they're just going to be looking very relatively simple, with nothing happening, and then Zero just simply winning the game. So that's sort of that's what the result that it's trying to get, you might say, instead of just. I think that the KJ version more enjoys the blood, the bloodbaths that in his games.
So I'm going to use a sports metaphor because we just had the World Series recently, and I'm not a big baseball fan, to be honest. As folks know, I'm a tennis player, but it was interesting. I followed the games, and the two teams reminded me a bit of Master in that you had two really sharp teams, and really, going at it where the differences were really close games, a number of games, going into extra innings. And, it's one of those things like with these games that we're looking at now, really high level stuff, really, where you're having to really figure it out and figure, okay, what's really going on there. Even though sometimes it can be almost difficult to know what's going on, it's kind of cool to see something going on at that level, to see a game played at that level. I thought that during the World Series, and I think the same thing watching these games.
Yeah. Actually, this is. Although White seems to be doing so well, it's actually pretty close. It's only a few points. Like Black's ahead on the board. I mean, before Komi, that is.
But not by much, right?
Not by much. I think that some of the variations that I got into, White was winning by something like 2.5 points. So it's actually a pretty close game. And again, we see that Master is still trying to attack, but it's just with ease, White is making eyes. And Black has to eventually protect that Black group on the upper side. And so everything they're doing here is making sense. And so White's already alive there on the upper side. Like if Black plays here, there's no way Black can get rid of that eye. Like it's an eye anyway. Because if White takes those two stones, White's going to have another eye here. So there's no way that Black can
nice.
Even though White has not yet played the squeeze, when White does capture those stones, it makes an extra eye. So this, in the beginning position here, White already has that one eye in the center and the two extra eyes. And so White can start playing the endgame, which is important because if White had to add a stone to that group, then maybe White wouldn't be winning after all.
Right.
And so I think Black actually gained just a little bit in this exchange where Black takes a stone on the lower side. And White potentially gets two Black stones in that area, but I think Black gained just a little bit there. But with AlphaGo, it doesn't cure, is what they say. And White playing here, strictly speaking, this is an interesting position where it's probably better for White to play straight down. And this avoids Ajirako, but there's a lot of nuances. But we'll see it play out, actually, how Black takes advantage of that mistake. And again, it has nothing to do with the final win-loss result. So we'll see that play out later in the game. And this capturing move here, yeah, well, again, that has to do with the extra eye, and White answered it, so it's okay. And this move here, this is the biggest move on the board. It's about 10 points. It's bigger than you might think. Like if Black had played here, which is also a pretty big move, White could peep here and take Black stone. So
nice.
That's about 8 points of Black territory that is gone, and about 2 points, not quite 2 points, but it's almost 10 points move of White territory that appeared. So that's a big move. But already, like white could have tried to avoid that, but white just giving that move to black because it's enough for white. So I think actually white might have had opportunities to win by a slightly larger margin, but as it turns out, white's going to win by something like 2.5 points. And again, this is a point where my first idea was that at this point, this might be bigger for black. Like this is a capture on the second line of 1 stone. This is what they say is 6 points usually. But in this case, there's some added value. It would be 6 points if there were no follow-up moves. But when white plays it, there's going to be a follow-up move. So it's more like 8 points. So this is an 8-point move. But actually, this move is pretty big too, because it has to do with the eyes of the white group. Like if white connects here, that's going to change the status of that eye there. And it's going to be good for black. Like black can play here and force white to play moves like this. So already black is sort of heading in that direction. And so black plays the Atari here. So it's a really big move. If black had played this way, that means that white would have been able to play the Atari here first. And this would have the added value of white playing. Let's see if this would add the forcing move here too later. And so there's a lot of little tiny added values there that actually make this move about the same size as the move that white's going to play.
Wow,
here.
this is some pretty fine-grained stuff we're talking here.
I sort of didn't understand it first. I thought that the white move was bigger, but it turned out they were about the same.
Interesting.
And the reason I'm saying that there's a follow-up move here, we're going to see it happen in the actual game, because black will play this and takes the two stones. And now white plays here. So this is the follow-up. It's a 4-point move that white can play. So white had the 6-point move plus the follow-up 4-point move. So it makes it more closer to 8 points. And by forcing white to live with this shape here, it means that black has a ko that black can make on the side there. Because this point is forcing to the left. White has to answer on the left. And so that means that, and that's why I was saying that, this stone here should have been straight down, because if I played straight down, that would have avoided the ko. And so when black doesn't make the ko, maybe there's kind of there would be a fraction of a point loss when white plays straight down. But since black can make a ko there now, it's actually become a bad move. White should have played the straight down instead. Because when black plays here, it means black has an opportunity to force white to connect on all of those points on the first line. So locally, this is a success for black. So black's playing this ko here. But the number of ko threats is pretty tight. It's not really an easy win for black. And even if we assume that black's going to win the ko, like we can have white just play some endgame moves. I think I might have even done that. Like they're playing this ko. Maybe I just gave up at this point. White's winning. White's winning anyway. But finally, black played here and allowed white to capture these two stones, which was a huge loss.
Whoa.
After this, black's behind before komi. Like white's winning before komi. So white doesn't even need komi after this. But so the correct move is, of course, is to connect. But even if we assume that black wins the ko, which I think I'm going to do, yeah. Even if we assume that black wins the ko, white can just play these two endgame moves, and white's going to win by 2.5 points. I think that's what I think that was what I was saying.
Wow.
So,
really interesting endgame, right?
It was an interesting endgame, and it was good because they weren't really. Master was not just giving up; it was trying to win. And
good fighting spirit.
It was close enough that Master was playing. Maybe not the optimum move, but was playing strong moves. that were like in this final ko here. Arguably, it wasn't really working for Black because White had a lot of ko threats too. But Black had to play that ko to keep in the game. So Master was playing the way a human top pro would play to try to keep in the game. And so it's much easier for me to understand what's going on. So I would be going back to this move. I would say that in a way this was even the losing move. Because I like the other variation where Black throws away those stones so much better. And I think actually I would be happy to play with Black in this position.
I gotta say I'm really, I mean, even at my level, just to play, I mean, just what you had said I think is really correct, which is it just, you always look to try and have a move that has, at least two meanings. And that one clearly only has one, right? I mean, it's just
it doesn't really help Black's eye shape, which is the main reason I don't like it.
Right.
Like it's like when White continues playing in this area, Black's going to have to play a lot of, disagreeable moves just to keep those stones connected because there's still a weak connection there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it just has a very odd taste. It's a almost unmaster-like move, if you will, right?
It's very unlike Master. In the games against humans, Master was much more prone to just give away the local stones and take control of the board. And so that's what this variation is. It's a variation that looks a lot more like Master than the actual game.
So it's zero outmastered Master.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, another great analysis. Thank you, Michael. And I got to say, this is a really interesting series. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to it. Me too, as well. So again, appreciate all the work that you're putting into it, and look forward to it. Again, want to thank all of our AGA members. If you'd like to support this content as well, please consider joining the American Go Association at usgo.org. Michael, thanks so much, and thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time.